a really nice transition here in terms of what will Bayern do with the attack is because one name that's been floating out there is Marcus Thuram, right? And we're going to package a bunch of Gladbach game players together, but I want to maybe separate Thuram from the other two that we'll talk about. Because Thuram is a really interesting player. He is with France at the World Cup. France has a lot of issues. We're going to talk about another French player further on in the podcast. But at the same time, it's still France. It's still one of the best, nations at the World Cup, and on paper, probably still the favorite to win it, right? Even though, there is this thing that the World Cup champions never get out of the group stage, but on paper they still have a very, very strong side. And Marcus Thuram, he is on Bayern Munich's list, but I think he is someone who's on a lot of clubs list, and we're probably now at the point too where Gladbach will have an almost impossible time to sign him to a new contract when his contract expires at the end of the year.
Oh, if I was a Gladbach fan, I'd be pulling my hair out over this because, this is a player who's been excruciatingly, frustratingly inconsistent, I think, over his time at Gladbach. He's always been capable of tremendous runs of form, scoring goals, creating goals. On his day, one of the best forwards in the Bundesliga. But, I mean, whether it's his fault is still up for debate, I suppose, because Gladbach have obviously been a very kind of up and down team recently. They've lost a lot of head coaches. They've lost their sporting director, who was once considered the one, bedrock of that club. He's moved on. He's now off to Leipzig. So I'm willing to maybe give Thuram some credit, or not some credit, some slack in that regard, because he's had to put up with a lot of changes at the club. But I do kind of still feel like we kind of joked about this at the start of the show or the start of the season actually, that his contract's out. He's out of contract in the season, so he'll play his socks off to get that move, and that's kind of what it looks like to an extent. And fair play to him, he's doing very, very well. However, I must admit, I do find the links to Bayern Munich a little surprising. I think the fact that he's only just been called up to the France squad as a reserve is probably a good example of maybe where he is. Obviously France have some of the best strikers in the world, so it's by no means a slight on him that he only just made into the team after Nkunku was called off with injury. But I think that's probably where he is as a player. He's not a top tier striker. I think in the grand scheme of European football, call him like a second tier striker. Not that he's good for second tier divisions. I just mean he's not good enough for top tier club, perhaps. So, I'd be a bit wary if Bayern would sign him with any intention of playing him as a starter. I don't think they would, to be honest. I think if they did pick him up, he'd be a player that they would maybe sign as a backup or a bench player, or Choupo-Moting Mark II sort of thing. Which I'm not entirely sure if he'd be willing to play as that. I think he's probably actually far better suited to the Premier League, to be honest with you. He's very physical. He's very good in the ball. Very good off the ball as well, and he's just such a useful player as well. He actually reminds me a little bit of Benzema, the way he now plays, in the sense that he's just kind of smart and very good at players playing off him. So I think he'd be perfectly good in the Premier League. But unfortunately, I've got very little to suggest that he would stick around at Gladbach, unless we had another similar situation to the summer there, where I think the club and the player were maybe sitting around waiting for a big offer to come in, and it never really did. Maybe some interest from Italy, I'm not so sure, but it just depends who wants him at the end of the day, I suppose. But if he continues scoring goals like he is for Gladbach, then I don't think he'll struggle to find suitors. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see where he goes. One club who could use him is Borussia Dortmund, I think, but who I think have been linked with another player we're about to be mentioned, which I'm not entirely sure that's a good move, but Thuram would be a smart signing for them, I think.
Well, Dortmund likes to sign players from other clubs in the Bundesliga more than anyone else does, and then blame Bayern Munich for doing the same thing. I made this really tongue-in-cheek kind of tweet, although I think there's more truth to it than a lot of Dortmund fans probably like, that the Borussia Dortmund buys all the best players from the other Bundesliga teams and makes them worse. Because you're right. I mean, this has Borussia Dortmund written all over it, and you just know that once Thuram signs a big deal. Because I remember when Kevin Hatchett tweeted that Thuram has been in excellent form recently, and I just subtweeted, said contract year, tongue-in-cheek again, right? You get that all the time. He's one of those players who performs when someone is waving a checkbook. That sounds harsh, but I think there's some truth to it. In terms of destinations, and we're going to talk about Leipzig at the show as well quite a bit, but I think that could be a good fit for him. If Nkunku does go, I could see Leipzig say, look, we could replace one French national team player with another. There is a strong French contingent at Leipzig. They have this strong tradition with French-based players, right? You wouldn't have to necessarily get him used to the environment that he's playing at, so it would be a really easy transition for him. Of course, this is just me speculating. I have no idea if Leipzig are really in for Marcus Thuram, but that's just something that comes to my head.